All right. So unfortunately, we couldn't get the breakout rooms to work on this webinar. So if you could just ask your questions and then um, say what jurisdiction you're in if you need to. And some of these questions are more general. So I think Josh, Brandy, or I might be able to take them. So let's start with uh, how much time should we consider for the permit process? Because I believe state law says that the longest the review period can be is 60 days. So
So, right. So maybe it's helpful. Does one of the city people, or I can just talk about what it's like when people apply, the comments they'll receive back, and how that works.
that sounds great. Let me just look up to see if um, this comment is from. Actually, Louise, could you write in the chat box what jurisdiction you're from? Oh, or are you in unincorporated? Because if you're an unincorporated, Josh can start and I can talk a little bit about the process. Why don't we do that?
Well, it actually probably is somewhat similar, and probably people will want to know this question for other jurisdictions
Yeah.
too. So why doesn't everyone just so I'll just start. Typically, you'll apply to your jurisdiction. Typically, you'll meet with your jurisdiction ahead of time to get any tips and advice or anything like that. That's really helpful. And then your architect will apply. The city will route it around to a bunch of different departments, and each department will do comments. They'll collect them, and then they'll give you your comments back. Give the architect your comments back, and then you'll do maybe one or two rounds of this as they get all their questions answered, and then you'll get your permit. So really the biggest question for timing is how thorough your architect is in putting all the information they need in for the first round before the city even asks, or answering those questions quickly. Because of state law, most cities are pretty fast about turning around their portion of the review. Do we want to, any of the cities want to weigh in?
Sure, I could add, I'm Christy Escher from Sausalito Planning, and I would just encourage folks to get a hold of each city's or jurisdiction submittal requirements, because we do go to an effort to try to really lay out what we need in a complete application to really expedite that application when it comes in and really streamline the process in terms of it being a complete application or close to being complete when it's submitted. We do have 60 days from a complete application. So that's an important distinction. So the closer to completeness your application can be when it comes in, the better. And again, I would just encourage you to really ask, and I'm sure the cities would all offer these, their specific submittal requirements for ADUs.
Thanks, Christy. That's really helpful. Do any of the other jurisdictions have anything else to add? Otherwise, I'll go to the next question.
Jillian, this is Irene from the city of Belvedere. Again, I'd have to agree with Christy. If they come in early in the process to the staff, we can help walk them through and give them the criteria that they need to get through that process.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Which makes it a simpler process for everyone if they can come in early on in the process to go through what they're proposing to do, so we can again provide them the information that they need for both planning and building.
And Irene, you don't charge for that initial meeting, do you?
No, we don't, and actually we don't even charge for an ADU application. It's a free process for planning.
Good to know. The other thing I'll add for unincorporated Marin County, which doesn't occur as much in southern Marin, but just in case there's anyone on here from a different area of unincorporated Marin, if you live in West Marin, you may have to do a coastal permit, which takes a longer period of time, has different considerations, and you may also need to upgrade your septic system. So I echo that sentiment of just coming in earlier rather than later, because there's some unforeseen um, departments that you might have to get acquainted with. So let me just move on to the next question. Does the unincorporated area of Marin have a preferred vendor or list of people they like to work with in the area? How can we vet our architect or builder? The workbook has a lot of really great information about how to choose the right architect or builder. Um, I'm going to say a little bit about this, but I think Brandy and Josh will be able to help me answer this question. Um, if you know someone who's redone part of their house, they did a great job, then I would encourage you to talk to them. Architects and builders really get their best clients through word of mouth. So talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Um, but there's checklists within the workbook to help you kind of vet an architect before you hire them.
Yeah, most cities, I'll add, most cities can't have a preferred vendor list for liability reasons and for fair process reasons. So it would be pretty uncommon to find that. In the workbook, you'll see scores of pictures, which when it will be out in a couple of weeks, and we have the name of the architect or prefab designer for each one of those pictures. And I'll say I'm a big fan of actually using your network, like your church, your work, your neighbors, to find your architect. If you find someone who is part of your network and hire them, there's a real strong incentive to make it right if something starts to go wrong. Obviously, if something goes terribly wrong, then you'll have a slightly awkward situation. But for the most part, you just have this one architects and everyone is really busy, so they're more likely to say yes to someone in their network. And two, you're this like, if someone's down the street, you're gonna really try very hard to find a solution that works for you. So that's my favorite tip for finding an architect.
Great. Okay. The next question is, can you build an ADU in all zones and developments? I can speak for unincorporated, and then maybe all of the jurisdictions can speak to this question. You can build an ADU you are permitted to build an ADU in all zones and developments except for industrial, but you could get a use permit in an industrial zone to build an ADU, so it's not impossible. Um, so how about we do Sausalito and then Belvedere to answer that question?
I think that's about appropriate to my understanding of it. Christy?
Yeah, thanks, Elena, for jumping in. We have it as a permitted use in like 3 of the 7 or 8 different types of commercial zone districts. I'm sorry, the question was, can it be in commercial or could it be in all? I'm sorry.
All.
All, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so then it can be in residential and single family, multifamily, and then it is only permitted in like about half of our commercial zone districts.
Great.
A simple rule of thumb is if you have a single family home or a multifamily home, you can probably build an ADU.
And for Belvedere, again, it is in a single family residential zone or multifamily residential zone where we allow the ADUs.
Great. And I don't think Tiburon is going to be very different.
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, the next question is, do you have any resources for prefab installation? Not sure. I know the workbook has photos of prefab installers credits them. So that's might be a good place to start, but maybe Josh or Brandy has ideas for other resources, maybe.
I would say really there's we don't want to, for the same reason the city for liabilities, we don't want to have a list of prefab builders, but there's probably only 5 or 6 prefab builders that are really targeting ADUs in the California market. So I would just sign up on the website and sign in the website so you know when the workbook comes out, and then when the workbook comes out, just look at the ones where we have pictures, and you'll get a pretty good idea of most of the ones that are operating in California.
And we also created a section in the back of the book that it's a resources section for ways to contact anyone that has a photo cited. So that's another way where you can see, oh, there's 4 prefab companies listed. It'll have their email address and contact information.
The Marin Builders Association is also a really great place to find resources. And being in building world myself as well, I'm both a builder and a broker. There are a lot of general contractors should be able to and will be able to do both. So it pays to call around and ask if they can do prefab, because a lot will. They may just not advertise it necessarily.
Great. Thank you. Our next question is, how are ADUs reflected on property taxes? There's also a lot in the workbook about this, but I would say that the property assessors department they're very friendly. And if you call the county property assessors, they're happy to walk you through it, because I think it's really a case by case basis. Generally, I think a detached unit will be reflected on your property taxes differently than an attached unit. But if you're doing a JDU, your property taxes, that's a junior accessory dwelling unit that's in an existing house, or if you're doing a home share, that's not going to be reflected on your property taxes.
I'll add that there's 2 parts to the property tax. There's your existing property, where if you've had it for a number of years, you might have low property taxes. That doesn't change at all. They'll only adjust your property taxes based on the value of the new construction. So if you have a Prop 13 locked in, good, low, my grandparents lived in the same house for 60 years, you're fine. It's just the value of the new construction that gets taxed.
Great. Okay. I like this question. Who can I hire to shepherd my ADU through to permit? I think your architect, your builder potentially, if you're doing design build. Also, if it's a really complicated process with coastal permit and working with environmental health services, I recommend there are planning consultants who just help through the planning process. But
Right.
Josh and Brandy might have some other ideas here.
I mean, I would just expect 9 out of 10 people who apply for an ADU now, it sails through pretty easily. Neighbors don't get to comment on it. There's not hearings about it. The planning side, which determines if you're allowed to do it, that like sails through super quickly. The side where sometimes people get hung up is the building permit side. What are the specific rules about the California Building Code for safety and other things like that? Sometimes things get a little hung up there, but a good architect or builder will help. And if you really don't want to go through the permit process, if you're really worried, and that's one of the cases where prefab construction is really good, because they'll get all their units certified by the state, and then the only part that your local jurisdiction is supposed to review is on-site work, like the foundation, the energy requirements, stuff like that.
Also, if you have it in your budget, you could also consider hiring like a project manager, an independent project manager, to put the whole thing together. But that's for high budget projects for sure.
Right. next question, do you have suggestions on which department or a specific person to talk with at the county for unincorporated ADU possibilities? I know that the offices have been closed to counter service and are extra busy due to COVID. So I'll put a link in the chat box a little later, but we have a virtual planning counter and they are pretty good about answering emails. I also have my contact information somewhere here, and if you're still having a trouble getting a hold of people, you can always send me an email and I can help answer your questions.
Just remind everyone, if you can, put your questions in the Quest Q&A function. It's a little easier for us to see them and track them.
Yes. The next question is, does Marin County go along with all of the new ADU state laws? Yes. So when the state laws go into effect, we have to abide by them. So if you're reading something in a state law and it looks different than something you see in one of the jurisdictions code, it's probably because there's either a new ordinance that they're developing or you're not looking at the most recent ordinance or laws because they were just changed in January. Okay, next question. I'm in unincorporated Mill Valley. I have a question regarding setback. Does the main house setback rule apply to ADU unit 10 feet from side, etc.? If so, then the ADU would be in the middle of the yard. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but this new state law says that if you're building a new detached ADU that's at or under 800 square feet, the setbacks from the side and rear can be 4 feet. So if your ADU is that standard detached at or under 800 square feet, then you can have a 4-foot side or a 4-foot rear setback. If your ADU is going to be any different than that, then setback rules might apply. I think it would make sense for you to either send me an email with your property address, and I can help kind of facilitate the rest of that answer. But I think it's important for everyone to hear that the new state law states that that side and rear setback rule is 4 feet if your ADU is new, detached, and at or under 800 square feet. Oh, and Josh is telling me that the setback rule applies regardless of size. So it can be more than 800. Right?
Yeah, I didn't want to, this is something where some cities disagree with the various interpretations of state law, but many cities interpret state law to say that that 4-foot setback applies to all ADUs. You'll have to talk with your city to get their interpretation of state law.
Yeah. Does the 60 days from a complete application apply statewide? This is a state law. This is part of state law, so yes. Can we physically come in to talk to you during COVID times, or do we make a phone appointment? So I'll start with our jurisdiction, but I think everyone probably wants to hear this for their jurisdiction. You can call us on the phone to make an appointment, or you can send us an email.
And
I
then
can answer for Belvedere.
once they make an appointment,
sorry.
they come in. Oh, sorry, I didn't fully understand that answer. Or they just talk with you on the phone.
They just talk with us on the phone, or they can send us an email. We're not doing in-person appointments right now. Sorry, Rebecca.
I can talk for Belvedere. We are open Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. We see people outside of City Hall. But if you can't make those hours, there are planners there sort of periodically through the week. So you can contact myself or Irene to make an appointment outside of those hours.
And I can speak for Sausalito. We've set up a virtual counter service where you can make an appointment. We take in permits and applications, and we discuss and answer questions about different permits and applications. It depends on what you want to do, the kind of appointment slot that's available. But I encourage everyone to go to our website and explore the options for the virtual counter service. And we meet people essentially through Zoom, just like this. It's an in-person conversation, not on the phone though. And we discourage email because our inboxes are overwhelmed.
It looks like Tiburon is accepting applications, and they're developing new processes to accept them electronically. They have some forms on their website. And the building division is open 8 to 12 Monday through Thursday for permit pickup and payment. Okay. Since we are registered here, will we be emailed the workbook? Sure, I have a list of everybody's email here. I am happy to email you once the workbook is live. Okay, next question. What is the starting price? Not quite sure.
What do ADUs cost? Well, maybe they're trying to ask what ADUs cost.
Okay,
So if
I'll let
you
you take this, Josh.
Yeah, so if you go to the website, that we have a calculator there that'll guide you through, give you a rough estimate of what it might cost. If you're looking for a ballparky figure, maybe maybe $425 a square foot, is maybe a little less if it starts to get larger, is a good place to start. If you're hoping to save a lot of money by doing a garage conversion, it's kind of could go either way. A lot of times garages aren't in that great shape and almost everything needs to be replaced, including the floor, because there's no vapor barrier. And then you just don't end up saving really much at all. Sometimes you get lucky and you do, but the windows need to be replaced and sometimes you don't. Modular construction, people often expect that to be a lot cheaper too, but it tends not to be, particularly if you have a difficult site to get access to. Modular construction adds up because there's sales tax charged on it, and you still need to do the site specific work and delivery charges. Sometimes it'll come out a little bit less, but it won't. Sometimes it won't. It does make your life simpler, and sometimes it's faster, but don't expect a big cost savings. And converting finished space or even unfinished space, that's usually the cheapest way to go.
Okay, that was great. Okay. Next is, what are the parameters for the permissible or required kitchen features for ADUs and JDUs? I could speak for the county first, and then I'll let the other jurisdictions answer this question. For a JDU, in order for it to qualify as a junior accessory dwelling unit, it has to be an efficiency kitchen. So I don't have that definition memorized, but I can pull it up and put it in the chat. And then an ADU would need a standard kitchen, which for us is more than an efficiency kitchen. So I will let the other jurisdictions answer this question too.
I can go ahead and answer for Belvedere.
Sure.
And our standards are the same as yours. I have the definition of efficiency kitchen right here if people want to hear it.
Yes.
It means a cooking facility with appliances and a food preparation counter or counters that are of reasonable size in relation to the size of the unit. And our ADUs require a full kitchen.
For the JADUs, do you allow plug-in appliances?
Yes.
I believe we have in the past, yes.
Yes.
Sounds like Belvedere does too.
Yes.
Okay. Sausalito?
So from reading from our code, we say an accessory dwelling unit shall contain its own kitchen facility and bathroom facility separate from the primary. The kitchen facility must include the following features: a sink, a refrigerator of more than 5 cubic feet capacity, and a range or fixed cooktop.
Great.
And then a JDU is slightly different. It needs to have a sink with a maximum waistline diameter of 1.5 inches. And we do allow plug-in appliances, but they cannot require an electrical service greater than 120 volts. It also requires a food preparation counter and storage cabinets that are of reasonable size in relation to the size of the JADU. Those are our kitchen requirements.
Great.
And I'll just add the reason to go with a JADU, it's really if you want, if you don't want to put in a full kitchen, then there's some advantages. But if you're going to do a full kitchen, there's not really too many advantages to going the JADU route versus the regular ADU route. It's probably better just to call it a small ADU because the JADU route will trigger in a lot of cases owner occupancy rules. I know we said that wasn't the case for ADUs, but for JADUs, there are owner occupancy rules. And then you're just limited to that 500 square feet. You don't gain a lot except for the little flexibility with the bathroom and the kitchen by calling it a JADU. Unless you want to do two of them, and then you can do one ADU and one JADU.
That's a good clarification. The next question is, there's no requirement for ADU owners to offer affordable housing as previously defined. Is that correct? So there's no requirement, but I'll let the other jurisdictions speak to this. We have if you're in unincorporated Marin County, we have incentives if you provide affordable housing. So if you're going to provide housing that's affordable to someone at 80% of our area median income or below, you get $10,000 of your building and planning fees waived by doing so and renting it affordably. And there's some other incentives if you rent it at market rate or at 120% AMI. So I encourage you to go to our marincounty.org/affordable housing, and we have a link to the application and the frequently asked questions for that program. But I'll let the other jurisdictions talk about how they might incentivize affordable housing.
I'll go ahead for Belvedere. We actually, at this point, do not have any incentives to rent your ADU as affordable housing. We're sort of starting with sort of just encouraging ADUs and JDUs within new single family developments, and just sort of hoping to get the word out and encouraging it throughout sort of the community outreach right now.
One of the things I'd like to add to Rebecca is that we have on occasion for those ADUs that have not met all the requirements and not been in a ministerial approval and needed a floor area exception or variances, things of that nature. We have required those units that if they're rented out, that they be rented out at an affordable rate for at least 5 to 10 years as part of their approval process, and included it as a condition of approval.
Thanks.